All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back here on the Steve Malzberg Show. And I couldn't help but notice that yesterday the NCAA reduced at least one portion of the penalties or sanctions levied against Penn State for the Sandusky scandal. And joining us now is the man who, has done so much and runs the great website framingpaterno.com. We welcome in John Ziegler. Hey, John, how are you?
Steve, good to talk to you. Always great to talk to someone who actually can see through the media smokescreen into what's actually going on here, and we finally got a little bit of justice in this case.
Yeah, well, talk about how this came to fruition, and then I do want to let the folks in on the fact that you contacted me yesterday and saw an analogy between the Paterno situation and another situation that this show was involved in. But let's talk about the granting of or reinstatement of some of the scholarship, the football scholarships. Is this a surprise, and how did it come about?
Well, it wasn't a surprise, although the timing was a little surprising. Here's what's really going on. The NCAA is trying to pretend that this is a situation where Penn State is getting a reduced sentence for good behavior, essentially. But what's really happening here is that the NCAA realizes that the Paterno family lawsuit is probably going to have standing. They don't want to go through that and the discovery process. They know that deep down they were wrong in giving these sanctions, one, because they didn't have jurisdiction, and two, because Penn State was not culpable, in my view, having investigated this for almost 2 years and having no connection to Penn State University, for the crimes of Jerry Sandusky. What they're really doing, Steve, is they're basically telling Penn State, well, we're so thrilled that you did a great job of pleading guilty to crimes you didn't commit and caving into our terroristic threats that the media helped us perpetrate on you, that we're going to reward you. We're also going to take the wind out of the sails politically of those who have been fighting these sanctions, because they're trying to basically put the Paterno family into a corner here and say, well, look, you said this was about much more than just the legacy of Joe Paterno. We're going to take away a lot of the penalties not dealing with Joe Paterno and see whether or not politically you can still stand up. Fortunately, from what I can tell over the last 24 hours, people aren't buying that. There's a remarkable poll on ESPN.com, of all places, showing that over 70% of the American people do not believe that Penn State was treated fairly here. And it's important that your viewers, Steve, understand that this is not a sports issue. This isn't even a Penn State issue. To me, this is a justice issue and a media issue. You mentioned the analogy that I made to you in an email yesterday. Your viewers should understand that this is a false narrative that the media bought into that is very similar to the Barack Obama false narrative, the Sarah Palin false narrative, which I dealt with in my documentary film, Media Malpractice, about the 2008 election,
right.
The George Zimmerman false narrative, and yes, as you did a great job with a couple days ago, this new book about the Matthew Shepard case, where what we thought we were told, what we were actually told, what we thought we knew was true, turned out to be totally false. But the media loved the narrative. It was good for their agenda. It was good for their ratings. They ran with it. And now they're going to be forced eventually, as the NCAA showed yesterday, to eventually, I believe, acknowledge that they were in fact wrong, that there was no cover-up here, and that Penn State, and specifically Joe Paterno, were in no way, shape, or form culpable for the crimes of an ex-assistant coach who was considered to be a saint of State College because he ran this massive charity for at-risk kids and had numerous foster children and adopted kids. I have spent a year and a half with no money, no agenda here at all, covering this case. I've interviewed Sandusky in prison. I went on the Today Show to discuss it, and I can tell you, Steve, I am positive that there was no cover-up in this case, and that most of what people think they know about this case is totally false.
Yeah, and again, and we're talking to John Ziegler here on the Steve Malzberg Show, filmmaker, founder of framingpaterno.com. We go back to the free report, and I'm not sure, but in my mind's eye, I seem to recall fairly recently more criticism. Maybe you would know better than I of where it came from, or if I'm wrong. But not too long, maybe a week or two ago, more criticism of the free report by someone.
Well, Bob Costas, of all people, with whom I've spoke several times, Bob Costas, who is by far the most well-known and respected sportscaster in America, who immediately at the release of the free report said that Penn State is guilty, that there ought to be some sort of death penalty here. He has done almost a 180-degree turn. He no longer believes that Joe Paterno was part of a cover-up. He has said so on national TV. Oddly enough, he said it on the Tonight Show, and Jay Leno agreed with him. And the rest of the media has pretended as if this is meaningless or never even happened. Bob Costas is taking a huge risk. He has a lot more to lose, obviously, than I do, and this is why he has been very conservative about his public statements, and understandably so. But the reality is, Bob Costas said this, and also, Steve, the prosecutor in the Sandusky case went on CBS and said, we do not believe that Joe Paterno was part of a cover-up. Now, that's against his own self-interest to say that. And yet, the rest of the media and CBS itself tried to spike their own scoop by essentially pretending that never happened. It's really been quite remarkable. If people go to the website, framingpaterno.com, they can see the real history of how this narrative got formed by the news media. And as far as the NCAA, Franco Harris, the NFL Hall of Famer, and I confronted the president of the NCAA late last year here in Los Angeles, and we exposed him as having no knowledge of the actual case at all. I don't even think he read the free report.
I wouldn't be a bit surprised. And by the way, you're talking about, I believe, Mark Emmert,
yes.
who in response to the or while lifting the sanctions and reinstating the football scholarships, said the goal has always been to ensure the university enforces clear expectations and a daily mindset within athletics that the highest priority must be placed on educating, nurturing, and protecting young people.
Well, Mark Emmert is a buffoon. And just to give you a very quick funny story, when Franco Harris questioned him, and we were able to get clandestine audio of this, which you hear for yourself at our video section at framingpaterno.com. Franco Harris started in the NFL in 1973, right? The sanctions go back to 1998, which is totally absurd if you know anything about the nature of this case, because nothing happened in 1998, and law enforcement investigated it, and Sandusky was found to have done nothing remotely criminal. But Mark Emmert actually thought during his response to Franco that Franco had played at Penn State after 1998.
Oh, my God. I guess he never heard of the Immaculate Reception or anything else, right?
Unbelievable. These are the people making the decisions, and people need to remember it was 10 days from the release of the free report to the time that the NCAA put out the worst sanctions in the history of college sports. And clearly, you know the way the world works, Steve. They didn't know what the heck they were doing. They were simply reacting to the media,
right,
cheerleading with their pom-poms out, intimidating the hell out of Penn State. And this also has a lot to do with the way academia works, the gutless, politically correct academia, where, oh, my God, we're going to plead guilty. We're not going to fight for ourselves because the media might say we're protecting a child molester.
Absolutely. I mean, they had a calculation to make. They knew what they were up against as far as the media and the hype and what they were caught up in. And that's what happened. But I do want to get back now into that. You made very interesting additions to the analogy, if you will, where you included and the work you did with Sarah Palin and how the media, just painted her as something she was absolutely not. I could see Russia from my house. The whole nonsensical storyline. And George Zimmerman. Something he was not. Cold-blooded racist killer who shot the guy in the back and got out of the car after he was told not to. This whole line still repeated today. And most recently, when I had Stephen Jimenez in the studio, who is a very accomplished, award-winning journalist, is an openly gay man. On the jacket of his book, no less than, oh boy, now I'm drawing a blank. It'll come to me. Said, everyone must learn the truth, and no one should be afraid of it, especially the gay community. Who's the most prominent gay journalist you could think of? It's on the book.
Andrew Sullivan?
Andrew Sullivan, thank you. The Advocate, one of the most prominent gay publications out there, writes a positive article on the book. Yet, as of yesterday, not CBS, ABC, NBC, MSNBC, CNN, any of them had mentioned one word, New York Times, Washington Post, one word about a book that calls into question the narrative that we've come to accept over one of the most iconic murders in recent history because it led to hate crime legislation that bared the name of Matthew Shepard. The whole storyline, apparently, according to the book, is changed, and the media has zero interest in even pursuing it.
Well, Steve, I can certainly sympathize with that because, as I mentioned, here I am, a documentary filmmaker in Los Angeles, no connection to Penn State, thought Joe Paterno should have retired years before, have not making a dime from this thing. I just found this to be an incredible injustice. I interview Sandusky in prison. I go on the Today Show. I go on your show and a bunch of CNN, a bunch of other shows, and I actually have the statement from the key victim in the entire case saying that Mike McQueary, the key witness, is lying, and I got zero media inquiries even asking about this on the Today Show because they don't care about the truth. They really don't. It's all about the narrative that they want, whatever they think is best for them personally, their job security, their fame, their fortune, their ratings, whatever it is, and it's so much more important than sports or Penn State or football or even the Matthew Shepard case. I believe we're now living in an era where journalism is completely dead, and that you cannot run a democratic republic, as you well know, without the fourth estate being at least remotely credible and at least remotely caring about what's actually true. The truth has to matter. And I can tell you with every fiber of my being, the truth has been lost in this Paterno-Sandusky story to a great travesty of injustice, which hopefully is now just starting to correct itself. Unfortunately, we live in a world where you can't unring that bell. That first narrative is everything. And that's what happened to Sarah Palin. The first 36 hours, the narrative of her was set, and it's impacting her still to this day.
Absolutely. All right, listen, keep up the good fight, John. Always good to hear from you, and we appreciate your time, sir.
Thanks, Steve.
Take care. John Ziegler, ladies and gentlemen, with great points. Truth be told, he saw the story about the Book of Matt, the book on Matthew Shepard. It's called The Book of Matt. He sent me an email and said, "Man, this is just like the same thing with the Paterno story. I see many analogies here." So I said, "Come on tomorrow. We'll talk about that." And by coincidence, Penn State had its football scholarships reinstated. So we'll talk about that as well. But this is so true, folks. We do not have a media as we have defined it forever. Now, it's changed. When you talk about technology, when you talk about, cable, nonstop 24-hour news cycle, the whole thing, but we don't have people that want to present, that want to get to the truth, no matter what the truth is, no matter where the truth might lead. Now, we welcome guests from both sides of a story, both sides of the aisle on this show. I try to treat everybody with respect. Sometimes I get carried away. But for the most part, 98% of the time, someone disagrees with me. We hash it out, and we part as friends, and they come back. But in the mainstream media, even in the coveted NBC Nightly News, CBS Evening News, ABC News, World News Tonight, those are supposed to be down the middle straight, and they will tell you, Diane Sawyer and Brian Williams and Scott Pelley will tell you they are. They will tell you they are. They have no axe to grind. They have no political axe to grind. They are down the middle. And that is so not the case. So not the case. Just one more on the book. How could it be possible? You mean they're so filled up? The morning shows are so filled up that they can't spare 5 minutes with Stephen Jimenez, who did years of investigation and came to a completely different conclusion on the Matthew Shepard death. They don't have 5 minutes to point that out to America. Not CBS, not NBC, not ABC, not CNN, not MSNBC, not any print newspaper nationally known of note. Nothing. That's not, well, it's sad, but what it is, I believe, conspiratorial. Absolutely, it's conspiratorial. I'm not saying they all get together and conspire amongst themselves, one network and the other network, but folks, I've worked in newsrooms. I've worked in newsrooms in different capacities. I've been a sports anchor in a major newsroom in New York City for a while. I know how I was treated. I know how I was viewed. I know why I was let go from doing sports back then in the year 2000, I believe. I know how it is. If you're Mike Lupica or you're the guy Granderson, LJ Granderson on CNN, who also runs ESPN.com, if you're Stephen A. Smith, if you're whatever, if you're not Stephen A. Smith, he doesn't fit in there. But if you're a sports guy and a political guy, you do both. You either write politics and talk sports like Mike Lupica. He also writes sports, but he also writes politics. Bottom line is, if you're on the left politically, you could do sports on the network, local station, sports talk radio. If you're on the right politically, you are poison, even to do sports in the same forum. So while it's not a industry-wide conspiracy where they all sit down, the network heads get together, they're so like-minded within each of these media outlets that's the way it is. That's the way it is. Believe me, I know. Okay, we're going to come back. You want to weigh in on this? I'd love to hear from you. 855-777-9660, 855-777-9660. Right here, Steve Malzberg on the Steve Malzberg Show, Newsmax TV and radio.
The Steve Malzberg Show.